idea is yes, okay. So I'll start real quickly because it's now being recorded. Tonight it is famous people you might have known were anti-Semites, famous and not so famous Americans. And the first slide is a picture of the white supremacists at the Unite the Right rally, Charlottesville, Virginia, August 11, 2017. The famous chant there was, "Jews will not replace us." That's for the benefit of the recording. So moving along, just get right to it. Um, I'm sure many of you recognize her. I even recognize her. Her name is Coco Chanel. And yes, the famous Chanel bags and the Chanel perfumes, etc. Coco Chanel has long been admired as a fashion feminist icon. For her reputation as an anti-Semite, less so. A little footnote, you know what motivated me to choose the topic is that there have been a number of websites that have been discussing anti-Semitism this week because of everything that's, 9 weeks now of increased anti-Semitism on campuses in the United States, but also um, anti-Semitism in some countries, like for example, as France, is up 1,300%. So, what about Coco Chanel? Despite having used Jewish investors to fund her fashion empire immediately before World War II, she had a notorious affair with a Nazi intelligence officer named Baron Hans Gunther von Dinklage. And at one point, she had to flee to Switzerland to avoid criminal charges for collaboration as a Nazi spy. In hearings held after the war, it was documented that she was a Nazi agent. She even had a Nazi identification number. It was F7124, and she spied with the codename Westminster. Her reconnaissance missions included Paris, Madrid, and London, which she attended in her role as being a fashion maven. Despite her well-documented Nazi collaboration and questioning by a French judge, she used her typical flair and flamboyance and got through it untainted after the war. She was an anti-Semite, she was pro-Nazi, and she was notoriously, and after the war, she did everything she could, by the way, not to repay her Jewish investors. So she was not a good person. She was apparently also cutthroat in business. Another person, Ezra Pound. I'm embarrassed to say that I remember Penny Burke, God bless her. She was my seventh grade English teacher at the Hebrew Academy. Wonderful teacher. I still see her. She's married to Gary. She's lovely. She's wonderful. She really turned me on to literature and poetry. And Ezra Pound was one of the poets that we used to study even in seventh grade. So who was he? Distinguished poet, writer, a malignant anti-Semite. He believed Jews to be responsible for the multitude of the world's problems, embraced stereotypical conspiracy theories about Jewish control of the media and the banking industries. And you're going to see this repetitively. Pound was an ardent supporter of Hitler and Mussolini, going so far as to give radio broadcasts for the Italian fascist government during World War II. He described the US president as Franklin D. Frankfurter Jews-Feld, and the Chinese leader is Chiang Kai-shek. Pound in 1910 wrote in Patricia Mia, The New Age, "The Jew alone can," I think the date is wrong, by the way, but maybe not. In 1910, he wrote in his poem, Patria Mia, The New Age, "The Jew alone can retain his detestable qualities despite climatic conditions." The sentence was removed from the 1950 edition because after World War II, after the Holocaust, people were sensitized to it. But it was done by the editor and not by him. When he read his poetry at Harvard, he included anti-Semitic poems in the program because he believed there were Jews in the audience. He knew let me rephrase that, because he thought there were Jews there, he wanted to insult them. In 1945, Pound was captured by the Italian resistance and handed over to the US Army. As we mentioned, he was in Italy. He spent months in a US military detention camp near Pisa, like the Leaning Tower of, including 3 weeks in an outdoor steel cage. Ruled mentally unfit to stand trial, Pond was incarcerated for over 12 years at St. Elizabeth Psychiatric Hospital in Washington, D.C. The doctors there viewed Pond as a narcissist and a psychopath, but otherwise he was completely sane. He was eventually let go, but he was a severe anti-Semite. It was also reported, I can't put everything on one slide, it was also reported that if he found that his food had been touched or made by any Jewish people, he wouldn't eat it that day. He would rather not eat than touch food made by Jews. T.S. Eliot, and this is also, everyone knows what my first name is, and everyone knows the spelling of my name, one L and one T. My mom read T.S. Eliot, and I guess she didn't know that he was anti-Semitic. I'm named Eliot because I'm named after Eliyahu Tzvi, but the spelling of my name, because there was this poet, T.S. Eliot. Who was he? One of the most acclaimed poets of the 20th century. He was a publisher, a playwright, a literary critic, editor, and unabashed anti-Semite. He even incorporated his anti-Semitism into his poetry. In his poem, Burbank with a Baedeker, Gleistein with a cigar, Eliot wrote, "The rats are underneath the piles, the Jews is underneath the lot, money and furs. We are below rats." Horrible. In his private letters, Eliot, spelled wrong, referred to Jews as unpleasant people and a race that has no sense of proportion. In 1934, a lecture in Virginia, Eliot stressed the importance of social unity of religious background. Reasons of race and religion combined to make any large number of free-thinking Jews undesirable. He didn't like us as individuals, and he didn't like us as a religion. He didn't like us as a group. Man openly espoused anti-Semitism. He really didn't like Jews. Charles, oh my gosh, this is one of the people I knew he was one of tonight's people. That Charles Lindbergh was a Fabrenta anti-Semite. He was a full-blown Nazi. Charles Lindbergh, everyone knows, I didn't even write it down, he was the first one to cross the Atlantic Ocean nonstop. And the name of his airplane was the Spirit of St. Louis. He was a great American hero. He was an aviator. He made the first solo flight across the Atlantic Ocean. He was also a Nazi sympathizer and unapologetic anti-Semite. In a speech in 1941, before we entered the war, Lindbergh claimed that Jewish people were trying to drag the United States into World War II for their own benefit. He even gave speeches in which he warned of a Jewish stranglehold on America, and he praised Nazi Germany's treatment of Jews. He praised it. And as late as April 1939, after Germany overtook Czechoslovakia, Lindbergh made excuses for Adolf Hitler. In a 1941 speech, Lindbergh said of the Jews, "Their greatest danger to this country lies in their large ownership and influence in our motion pictures, our press, our radio, and our government." That was in 1940. It's unbelievable. By the way, in regard to the truthfulness of that statement, we were not controlling the radio. We were definitely not in control of the government, and we were not in control of the press. What we were, Jews at that time in the 1930s and 1940s, we definitely were disproportionately represented in Hollywood, the making of the movie industries. I think 4 out of the 5 major movie studios were Jewish owned. Now, that being said, if we controlled the government, don't you think they would have bombed Auschwitz? Don't you think they would have bombed Treblinka, Majdanek? No, we didn't control the government. And the radio, just the opposite. We're going to get to Father Gocklin, one of the most severe anti-Semites that had radio shows. All the major anti-Semites had radio shows. For example, Arthur Godfrey had a radio show. Also unapologetic. We'll see if we can get to him today. This was, although we're talking about the we're talking about the 20th century, Charles Dickens lived in the end of the 19th century. And Charles Dickens, we all know Charles Dickens, one of the great novelists, He's famous for Oliver Twist. He wrote so many important books, but one of the world's best known fictional characters, and he took great pleasure in depicting Jews in a negative light. For example, in Oliver Twist, Fagin is one of the best known Jewish characters in English literature. The only one I can think about that's worse is The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare. But Fagin is described as a very old shriveled Jew whose villainous looking and repulsive face was obscured by a quantity of matted old hair. A villainous looking shriveled old Jew. Now, if you remember in Oliver Twist, Fagin trained and ran a cult of little boys who stole. In other works, Dickens describes the dirty ways, the thieving tendencies, and the lisping aspects of Jews, along with Jewish mamas who are beasts and averse to using soap and water. Dickens even refers to a situation in which he wanted to borrow money and was offered a loan at an outrageous interest rate of 120% by a Jew of decidedly Israelite cast of countenance. He wrote horrible things about Jewish people. This particular photo on the right, Ron Moody was a great character actor of the 50s and 60s, and he wasn't Jewish, but he was not anti-Semite. In fact, both his wives were Jewish, and he had children with both of them, and they were raised as Jews. So although he took the part as Fagin, he was decidedly not anti-Semitic. This was a little upsetting to me because it's one of my favorite movies. Roald Dahl, celebrated for his whimsical children's books, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and Matilda. The book Matilda was always one of my children's favorite books. If I would have known he was such an anti-Semite, I'm not sure I wouldn't have, but I would have thought more about reading his books. Throughout his life, he made comments on record. So that's the thing, talking at in a bar or talking at a cocktail party is one thing, but going on the record, he defined his fervent anti-Semitism. Jews are filthy, dirty, noxious, and repellent race, and the hardest people to teach a lesson to. By the way, you're not supposed to end a sentence with a preposition. So I don't know what kind of great writer he was. There's a trait in the Jewish character that does provoke animosity. Maybe it's a kind of lack of generosity towards non-Jews. I mean, there's always a reason why anti-anything crops up anywhere. Even a stinker like Hitler didn't just pick on them for no reason. I mean, this is such hate speech. It's absolutely frightening. And the picture on the right is from the original movie of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And what's really interesting is in this particular picture, Gene Wilder is Jewish. I've got this character actor's name. He's also Jewish. Gene Wilder was one of Gene Wilder's. Oh, God, I love Gene Wilder. May he rest in peace. Real tzaddik. It's one of his fantastic. He sang, he danced. It was a great movie. But it was written by this virulent anti-Semite. So here's one that was kind of upsetting. And she's being billed as an anti-Semite. Miley Cyrus, daughter of the country music star Billy Ray Cyrus. She began acting at a young age, landing the starring role in the hit show Hannah Montana in 2004. So she's about 30 years old now. She went on to release several successful albums, including Breakout and Can't Be Tamed, while becoming increasingly known for her wild and eccentric behaviors. At the age of 20, many accused her of being an anti-Semite after she made a comment on current music industry executives. What did she say? There's a website called Hunger, and she said, the adults who deemed her gyrations too sultry and her music too saccharine were simply too ancient and Jewish to get it. This is what she said. I can't be like this 70-year-old Jewish man that doesn't leave his desk all day telling me what the clubs want to hear. She took a lot of flack for it, but she didn't apologize either. So I was looking for the apology. And finally, online, I found one particular website that said that as of like 2 weeks after her comment, she really did not make, her publicist made a comment that she's been taken out of context. But you should know that in the music industry, the, there are Jews represented in the Jewish industry, but not in the Western country music industry. So I'm not exactly sure what she was talking about, but it was definitely trying to be insulting. I think that if she would have said the same thing about a black man, that the ramifications would have been more significant. You should also know that she has become, um, I'm trying to think of the proper way to express it. She's become like a wild party girl doing very eccentric behaviors. But on the other hand, I checked, she has something like 40 million followers on Instagram. Um, this is a no-brainer. I think we're all familiar with Kanye West. He legally changed his name to Ye, like Kanye, Ye, just plain with Ye. He's made so many um, anti-Semitic comments on Instagram and Twitter that he was actually kicked off of Twitter. He was also kicked off the Instagram for a while. And then he what's called doubled down. When he went on various talk shows and interviews, he, instead of apologizing, he did just the opposite. He repeated them and defended his statements. So after it came out, he got canceled, this deal and that deal, and his sneakers and this. Um, a business associate said that Kanye West, had read Mein Kampf, and actually, not only he had left it out, he used to leave it out in his office, opened, as if he was reading it more than once. And he often said things that he was an admirer of Hitler for his skill in propaganda, and that West made employees sign NDAs, that's a non-disclosure agreement, so they would not reveal his anti-Semitic pro-Nazi rants. Well, the reason why they came out is because on one radio show, he came out and actually said out loud that, Hitler um, was unappreciated for many things. So as soon as he broke the NDA, they were allowed to come out and confirm that he used to say remarkably anti-Semitic things and was pro Hitler. When rapper Sean Combs, Diddy, his nickname is Diddy, he criticized West for wearing a White Lives Matter shirt. Kanye responded with, "I'm going to use you as an example to show the Jewish people that told you to call me that no one can threaten or influence me," saying that the Jews controlled Diddy. When he was blocked on social media, he tweeted he wanted to go DEFCON 3 on the Jewish people. And he added that, "You guys have toyed with me and tricked and tried to blackball anyone who opposes your agenda." So this is so anti-Semitic at so many different levels. I mean, basically, there's an agenda, there's a Jewish conspiracy, we control people, we force up people to do things against their will, to attack anti-Semites. I mean, on Tucker Carlson's show, he stated that he believes black people are the real Jews and that Jews aren't authentic. I mean, he said such remarkably anti-Semitic things. Now, I will never defend him. However, we must also acknowledge that he does suffer from mental illness. And when he was medicated, he was less anti-Semitic. And when he went to go off his meds, his rantings became more prolific. Now, I'm not going to defend him just because he suffers from mental illness. I think that that when he would be medicated, his filters were on. That's my opinion. And when his mental illness got the better of him, he would just make comments and statements that he would normally have been able to control. That's my opinion. Charlie Sheen, not one of my favorite people. He's known for many movies and TV shows, of which his most successful one was called 2.5 Men. Honestly, I don't think I ever watched it. When arguing over contract issues, he ridiculed the show's producer, Chuck Lorre, and kept on referring to him as Chaim. Now, that being said, Chuck Lorre's real name is Chaim. If I'm not mistaken, it's Chaim Levy, but he changed his name. And this is what Charlie Sheen said: "We are at war, and there are always ways to deal with these clowns and take all their money," referring to the Jews. "Last I checked, Chaim, I've spent the last decade, I don't know, effortlessly and magically converting your tin cans into pure gold." Saying that, it's a money issue, that he's a Jew, and that, it's he. Now, again, a lot of people use the excuse that he was, well, once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. It's like a disease. Once you're diabetic, you're always a diabetic. But he's also, he has many cross addictions: cocaine, heroin. I don't personally think that's an excuse. Again, I think that when people are medicated, they only have filters, so they don't always tell you how they feel. But I think when people are drunk, for example, and by the way, contrary to popular belief, and I know there's some doctors watching, participating today. If I'm not mistaken, alcohol is not a suppressant, contrary to popular belief. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. It's not it's not an upper, it's a downer. So what happens is when you drink alcohol, it suppresses those filters. I think people really tell what they're thinking when they're drunk. In fact, in the Talmud, there's a saying: "Nichnas yayin yotze sod." When the wine goes in, the secrets come out. I would love some chats or questions. Just let me know if you have any questions. One of my most disliked professionals is Mel Gibson. In fact, it's not a secret. I really like science fiction, and Mel Gibson has made a number of action movies, but also quite a few science fiction movies. And he became famous through his Mad Max movies. Those were first, second, and third of his big hits that made him famous. And I got to tell you, I liked them. But as soon as this came out in the early 2000s, about him being, he and his father is a raging Hitlerite in Australia. I'm not sure if he's still alive. And when his father went on a show and blasted Jews, and they asked Mel Gibson to say something, and he goes, I love my father, I'm never going to countermand him. Like he was asked, like, but your father said, Hitler is right, he wished he killed more Jews. He goes, he's my father and I love him. And that's when it started coming out just how anti-Semitic Mel Gibson really is. In 2006, this is one of the famous things. He went on an anti-Semitic rant after he was arrested, as he was being arrested, on a suspected DUI charge. He reportedly asked the arresting officer if he was Jewish, and he said, "You effing Jews. The Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world." By the way, can you believe it? The California Highway Patrolman was actually Jewish. Actually Jewish. Winona Ryder is a proud Jewish actress. She's very sweet. She's come out for Israel in the last 9 weeks. She's come out. She's very famous for. I'm sorry. Hello. I missed that. So Winona Ryder is actually friends with, I believe, with Mayim Bialik, and they've done videos together. So she had an incident with Gibson as well. And this is what she said: "We were at a crowded party with one of my good friends, and Mel Gibson was smoking a cigar. And we were all talking, and he said to my friend who's gay, 'Oh, wait, am I going to get AIDS?' Because he was smoking a cigar and whatever, and it was near him, and he kept on putting it in his mouth or something. And then something came up about Jews, and he said this to Winona. He said, 'You're not an oven dodger, are you?' Fox News reported that Gibson had told an interviewer Peggy Noonan that he didn't believe Jewish historical references of the Holocaust. This is what he said. By the way, everyone knows what an oven dodger is. It was an inference to, oh, you're a Jew? You mean your family didn't, you dodged the oven? Your grandparents didn't get thrown in an oven? That's how obnoxious he was to Winona Ryder. He actually said this to Peggy Noonan on Fox News. I mean, when the war was over, they said it was 12 million. Then it was 6 million. Now it's 4. I mean, it's kind of a numbers game. So how anti-Semitic is that? First of all, we never said it was 12 million, and we never said it was 4 million. So, um, so there's a question. How do you think Mel Gibson's with having Jewish grandchildren? I didn't know he had Jewish grandchildren. I know he has like 14 kids with 2 women. His first wife, I think he had 11 children with her. They're Catholics in Australia, but I didn't know. Listen, I can tell you that one of the famous people, the Clintons' daughter, Chelsea, I think her name is, she married a Jewish man and they're raising the children Jewish. Trump has, I think, 4 Jewish grandchildren. They're being raised Orthodox. You know, I think it's an amazing thing. The Kennedys, what's her name? Carolyn Kennedy. She married a Jewish man, and her children are being, well, I think they're pretty old now. They were raised Jewish. So I don't have an answer to that. I don't know how he deals with it. I know that he's estranged from some of his kids, but I don't care. So here's another person that I never liked, and I saw the movie Platoon, but I did not see JFK. In 2010, he had to apologize for comments he made during an interview in which he called Hitler an easy scapegoat. Can you imagine this? He also was recorded as saying, this was literally recorded, the Jewish domination of the media. There's a major lobby in the United States. They are hard workers. They stay on top of every comment. The most powerful lobby in Washington. Israel is, I'm sorry, I should have started that. He has effed up the United States foreign policy for years. After media pressure, he apologized. I'm trying to make a broader historical point about the range of atrocities the Germans committed against many people. I made a clumsy association about the Holocaust, for which I'm sorry and I regret. Jews obviously do not control the media or any other industry, he said, adding that the Holocaust was an atrocity. So first of all, he claims to be an intellectual. So it's hard for me to believe that on day one, he says that the Jews control Washington and control the media. And then after there's, a horrible backlash, 3 days later, he says, I made a mistake. The Jews don't control Washington and they don't control the media. Do you believe him? I don't believe him. I believed him the first time. I don't believe him. I don't believe the apology should, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it. Apologize that I really didn't mean it. I don't believe that. I think he thinks that. I think he thinks that's the fact. He just apologized because he got caught, and that a lot of times you don't know how. For example, when the billionaire Ackman withdrew his money from from UPenn, all of a sudden or was it Harvard? Forgive me, I don't know. All of a sudden things are changing. Oh, we made a mistake. No, I don't believe it. Now, I don't know about you guys, but my family never would buy a Ford motor car because Henry Ford was one of the great anti-Semites of the 20th century. Ford was one of the wealthiest and most successful entrepreneurs in the world, but he believed Jewish people had international control over the unions, the banks, and the media, and that all were out to get him. He bought the newspaper, the Dearborn Independent, and began publishing a weekly series on the front page, by the way, The International Jew, The World's Problem, on the front page. It was based on the anti-Semitic hoax known as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Ford continued the series for many, many years, even distributed the paper in his dealerships around the country. He also paid for the printing of free copies of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and he would give them away for free. and there were dealerships that would give out a copy when you bought a car. He and Hitler were friends, and Hitler mentioned him by name in Mein Kampf. In 1938, Germany awarded Ford the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, the country's highest medal for foreigners. At the Nuremberg trials, Baldur von Schirach and the Reich Youth Leadership, he said, he was the head of the Reich Nazi Youth. The decisive anti-Semitic book which I read at that time, and the book which influenced my comrades, was Henry Ford's book, The International Jew. Can you imagine? He was so bad that even Nazis were influenced by what he had to say. It was amazing. Now, what happened was, in his latter years, I don't know what year it was, but they say that when he stopped publishing the International Jew, and he stopped being as vocal an anti-Semite. And people said, is it because he was getting old, or did he get wise? And the joke was, he stopped being an anti-Semite when he tried winning back the Jewish purchase power, because every time he saw a Jew driving a General Motors, he knew he was losing money. General Motors, they started buying up smaller companies like Pontiac and Buick, etc., and they were, for the first time, a true competitor to Ford. And all of a sudden, that's when he stopped being as anti-Semitic. Another question, let's see. In the case of artists, writers, and musicians, there's a line where you can separate the person from the artist. For example, can you like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but revile Doll? In the case of folks like Gibson or Roger Waters, they've gone too far over the edge, and I can't separate the two. Adam, I totally agree with you. Hopefully Waters is one of the people that I'm going to be discussing. Hopefully we'll have time, but that's in fact that warrants stopping the share for a minute, because the concept of boycott, divest, and sanction is that we don't give any emotional or financial support to people that we don't believe in, or that people are doing bad things. So I would never go to a Pink Floyd concert. I would never. So here's the other thing. I have not seen a Mel Gibson movie for 25 years, even when it's free. So, for example, what happens if I'm watching broadcast television, ABC, and they would have a Mel Gibson movie? I wouldn't watch it, and the reason is because I use cable, and when you watch cable, it literally sends a signal to the distributor, and they see what you're watching. And what happens is it's the same exact thing, for example, with the New York Times. I don't read the New York Times. I cannot think of maybe the Washington Post, and the Guardian in London. They're so anti-Semitic. So when someone sends me an article and it says New York Times on it, I don't click on it, because when you go to the New York Times website, it says how many people viewed this article. And what happens is, if 82,147,000 people read that article, they can then use that to make money, because they turn to their to people who want to take out ads. It goes, look, on a daily basis, 80,000 people read articles about this. So if you're selling a product that relates to this, then we will give you a special rate, $25,000 per click, whatever. So the whole idea is, when you visit a website, when you watch a movie, you are inadvertently giving succor to these people. So, for example, when you watch a Mel Gibson movie on a television show, or if you watch it even on Netflix, they get it's like when a radio station plays a musical a song, the person who wrote it gets, I forgot the correct term, but gets remuneration, gets paid for it. So can you like the movie, but not, can you watch it? So you know what? I really would like my children to see, my grandchildren to see Willy Wonka. I
Mm.
really would like them to see it. And the way I would probably do an end around and rationalize it is because I don't think Dahl made he might have been paid initially, but the producers and the directors and the actors were all Jewish. So that's why I would do a work around it. But let's say, for example, going to a Pink Floyd concert, no. Well, I should say Waters and the
Yeah.
accent, no, that I wouldn't do because that's directly giving them support. What about liking their music? So we have a beloved member of the shul who walked down the aisle to Pink Floyd. You know, what can I tell you? But that was, 25 years ago. But today, I would probably, if I knew about it in advance, I would ask them not to and explain to them why they shouldn't. That's my opinion. Um, just my opinion. Well, what happened? Didn't go to the right page. Let me go back to here. So getting back to, um, so here's another person, Julian Assange. I think he's mentally not stable. So he started WikiLeaks, and he's famous. It was about 12 years ago. Um, he started this WikiLeaks, like Wikipedia. It's famous for leaking more than 750,000 American military and government classified and secret documents. Since 2011, he's been accused of being an anti-Semite numerous times. If I'm not mistaken, he's in London and he's been fighting extradition to the United States for many years. So WikiLeaks employed a very anti-Semitic Holocaust denier named Israel Shamir. What? A Jew named Israel? No, it was a pseudonym. Shamir claimed that he was Jewish, and he claims that Jews perpetrated mind control and that they asked God to kill, destroy, humiliate, exterminate, defame, starve, impale Christians, to usher in divine vengeance and to cover God's mantle with blood of Goyim. It's not true. There's no Jew who would do something. I mean, I take that back. Who knows what a Jew would do? But when you search for Israel Shamir, there's no such person. No such person ever went to any universities, no colleges. That there's no historical reference in that you could find using all of our deep web searching, could they ever turn up anyone by the name of Israel Shapir? When asked about Shapir and other anti-Semitism issues, he blamed the Jewish British journalists who were leading a conspiracy against him. Jewish British journalists? Really? Then why are the three most anti-Semitic newspapers in England, or the BBC, etc., London Times? On his personal Twitter account in July 2016, he mocked Jews who questioned his ethics. He also blamed the Jewish pro-censorship lobby when the French satire magazine Charlie Hebdo was put on trial for publishing anti-Semitic cartoons. In 2018, Assange again berated the Jewish heritage of a critical journalist. He said, "He's always been a rat, but he's Jewish," spelling incorrect. So the idea is that he's tremendously anti-Semitic. My personal opinion is that there is no one called Israel Shamir, and that it's just a false identity created so that he could manifest these anti-Semitic comments. WikiLeaks is still one of the great sources for um, people who want to, um, what's the correct term? Um, expose um, problems in the workplace or in government. It has a place. It does some good things. It also does some bad things, but we don't question his anti-Semitism. John Galliano is British. He spent nearly 15 years at Dior. He was one of their great fashion designers. He's widely considered to be one of the most brilliant fashion minds of his generation. In 2011, he was found guilty and fined. These are French francs by a Paris court for racist and anti-Semitic rants at people in a Paris bar. He was video recorded hurling abuse at people in a bar in Paris's historic Jewish quarter, where he stated his love for Adolf Hitler and told people he thought were Jewish that their mothers should have been gassed. He made 30 anti-Jewish insults in the space of 45 minutes. Witnesses testified that he made similar insults to others in the same bar 2 months earlier. Now, that being said, he was given a relatively light sentence of 5,200, francs a fine because he proved that he was suffering from multiple addictions, alcohol, drugs, etc. He also claimed that he was suffering from depression. That being said, as I mentioned before regarding Charlie Sheen and other people, that I think that nichnas yain yotze sod, that when people become inebriated, they don't make up things they don't think. They just have lost their filters and they express things that they really mean. That's my opinion. But I haven't had too much exposure to people who are drunk or on drugs. So, but the few times it has occurred, I find that gives you insight into who they are by what they say and do. They ever hear people say they're happy drunks and then there are sad drunks? That definitely, I've seen that. So, had some really good questions tonight, so don't hesitate. I'm going to actually end tonight here on this one because for more than 30 years, Louis Farrakhan has led the Nation of Islam. His accusation against Jews would take up 14 pages of quotes just from the past 5 years. I was Googling him, doing my research, and I found one website that did all my work for me. And so he has, what I did here is I put approximately 9 areas of his quotes, because let's just take the first one, which is one of the oldest ones. It goes back close to 36 years or 37 years. It was in the late 1980s when people are dying left and right of AIDS. And this is what he said: Jewish doctors infected black babies with AIDS, specifically in Chicago, to keep the black population down. So he said it so many times, and he even repeated it, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm doing this part from memory, as recently as like 2012. So there were so many pages that documented his radically anti-Semitic lies and his rantings. So let's give a few more of them. By the way, Kanye West, yay, he based a lot of his anti-Semitism on the teachings of Farrakhan. He literally quotes him. And one of the most famous quotes is that Jews are not the real Jews, that blacks are the real Jews. Kanye has said it. Louis Farrakhan has said it. It's one of their foundation stepping stones of their belief systems of the Nation of Islam, that they are the true chosen people. Jews in Hollywood control black artists, demanding sexual favors and illicit behaviors. So when Weinstein scandal erupted, that just validated for him, the proof that the Weinsteins were targeting black actresses. Now, in reality, anyone like Weinstein, and Weinstein specifically, he targeted women. He didn't care the color of their skin. Were there African American actresses that were probably abused by him? Yeah, he abused women. And in his demented, sick capacity, Weinstein would abuse all women, regardless of color. Jews control the banks, media, and Congress. You know what? I actually wish that was true. I really do, especially the media, because we're losing every war. We win every battle, lose every war because wars are determined not on the battlefield, but rather on the in the in the streets due to media. I wish Jews controlled the media. We don't. Just the opposite. We don't get a fair shake in the media. And the proof is how misrepresented, Israel and Judaism is constantly being portrayed in movies, in books, in newspapers, on social media. Congress, we have influence. That's true. What else? Jews forced America into World War II to make money and kill black soldiers. So one of his rantings is that he wanted to know why, if in 1944 African Americans were, I think, 11.8% of the population, then why were they 17.5% of the deaths in World War II? I don't know. That's one of the things that, he claimed that Jews forced America into World War II so that we could make money in the war industries and cause the death of black soldiers. Jews imprison Palestinians, kill them, and sell their body parts. I'm telling you, you can't make this stuff up. He actually tells this to his congregation. Jews ran and controlled the slave trade. No matter how much proof we bring him that that's just not historically accurate, he does not care. They have written books proving that Jews ran and controlled the slave. They initiated them. Were there Jewish trade slavers? Yes, there were. But what percentage? A very, very disproportionately low compared to our population in the New World. Jews are dispersed throughout the world so they can climb to power and contribute to world dominion. I'm telling you, this is his sickness, and these are things that he says. So I have 2 minutes to 8. So I see that there's 3 questions or comments. Let's see. Farrakhan is ironic. Hold on, I think there's one before that. Farrakhan is ironically currently suing the ADL and Simon Wiesenthal Center for libel for calling him anti-Semitic. Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's the world's a crazy place. Congress is about 6% Jewish. Andrew, I think are you sure it's 6?
I just looked it up. There are 33 members in this Congress.
Okay. So we're about 2.3% of the population, I think, or 2% of the population. So that's an interesting thing. That doesn't mean we control it, but it does mean we are represented. What are your thoughts about people that have apologized for anti-Semitic comments, mainly because they've been called out, but they still apologize in the past year? Elon Musk, Jamie Foxx, Claudine Gay, Kyrie Irving, Susan Sarandon have all apologized. Should their apologies be accepted? So I can tell you that specifically, Elon Musk put his money where his mouth is. He went to Israel. He met with Netanyahu. He met with the hostages. I'm not so sure that his comment was as anti-Semitic as being portrayed. And the other thing is, he doesn't really care what people think about him. That's the way he is. He had no reason. He had no reason to go to Israel, and he went, and he's continuously made pro-Israel comments since his trip, and he is there. I got to tell you, there are a lot of Jews on the right that think that Elon Musk is trying to now make changes to take better steps to ensure there's less anti-Semitism on X, formerly known as Twitter. Jamie Foxx, I think Jamie Foxx also might have been taken out of context. Claudine Gay, I think she's just one of the stupidest smart people that we will meet. I think what she did was horrible and disgusting. I don't like Kyrie Irving. I think Susan Sarandon is a nasty person. And just because, and the only reason I think they apologize is because not like Kanye, but like when they lost their their endorsements when they, when it hit them in the purse, then that's when they apologize. Regarding Claudine Gay, listen, it's a no-brainer. Are you willing to condemn anti-Semitism and the call for genocide against Jews? I don't, there's no context. You have to take it in context. I thought that was, and the other thing that really bothered me, the smirk on their faces. I I think they only apologized when they got hit in the purse. They got hit in the wallet. So I think that there have been some very famous people that have been were openly anti-Semitic and changed their ways. So, for example, I'm not sure if you know about Ulysses S. Grant. Ulysses S. Grant was a general in the American Civil War for the North, and he wasn't a nice person. He was an alcoholic, this and that. And what happens is he petitioned and he passed a war while he was a general, and he gave Sherman a edict, a very severe military, to go and clean house of Jews because he had been told that the Jews were collaborators with the South and that the Jews were manipulating cotton, et cetera, et cetera. It turned out it was 100% a lie, that in actuality, the Jews were the intermediaries to get cotton to England so that England could sell it to the North because the North did not have enough cotton to make uniforms. So the Jews were cooperating with England to get cotton to the North. They weren't breaking the laws. The North knew about it. So there was this whole, I forgot what an army military edict is, but he was the head of the army. He was a five-star general, and he voiced some extremely anti-Semitic things. And I think it was like 3 months later, it was brought to his attention that it was a lie. It was wrong. And he canceled the edict. He helped resettle the Jews that had been kicked out. And then when he became president, he went out of his way to be good to the Jews and become friendly to the Jews and help Jews. And when he died, the Orthodox rabbi in Washington, D.C., walked 7 miles to attend the funeral. It was Shabbat, on Shabbat. That's how close Ulysses S. Grant had apologized for being wrong about the way he treated Jews. There are other people who have been, sincerely repentant. Um, Shoot, I forgot his name. He was the governor of Alabama. He ran for George Wallace. So George Wallace was notoriously anti-Semitic and anti-Black. Remember that famous picture of him standing on the steps of a high school refusing to let Black students in when the Supreme Court passed a law that integration of schools? He was extremely anti-Black. And after he was shot, he had like an epiphany, an eye-opening movement. And he just the opposite. He became, so what happens, I think it was Shirley Chisholm, a Black congressman, Shirley Chisholm, visited him in the hospital and he was unconscious, and sat by his bed for hours every day praying. And he finally opened up his eyes and he goes like, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "Just because we don't agree, just because I think you're wrong, doesn't mean I'm not going to pray for you." And they became friends, and he had a complete 180 turnaround. And not only about his treatment about Blacks, but he became on the forefront of the civil rights movement after his attempted assassination. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was in 72. I'm doing this all from memory. But more importantly, he also had this rude awakening about the way his thoughts about the Jewish community as well. So those are just two examples of people who were adamantly anti-Semitic, but were educated and changed their ways and became just the opposite, friends of the Jewish community. Those are just two political leaders. By the way, you should know that there are plenty of very famous artists and actors who are extremely pro-Israel. So, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger. John Voight. Do you recognize these names? You remember Midnight Cowboy, John Voight? This guy is so pro-Israel. Arnold Schwarzenegger, so pro-Israel. Um, there are just so many actors and male and female, that are pro-Israel. I think, however, that we don't have as much good media as the anti-Semites do. So, for example, when Susan Sarandon comes out with her extremely anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian comments, the pro-Palestinian media gets it out. It's all over the world. And when Arnold Schwarzenegger gives $25,000 to Hatzalah, it doesn't get out. By the way, tonight is the Hatzalah dinner. There's at least 3 or 4 members of our Tuesday night class that are there. I was supposed to be there, but to tell you the truth, I thought I was going to have to be at Shiva House. And so I rearranged my schedule and gave my tickets away. So I hope everyone enjoyed class. I'm looking for a topic for next week. And God willing, we'll see you tomorrow in Minyan at 8 a.m. My Bible class is tomorrow at noon. Okay, any questions for the rabbi? No? Everything's good? Andrew, it's good to see you.
I just finished finals and then back in Florida, so I'm hoping to make it down to see you in person in a couple weeks.
All right, excellent. Let's do lunch also. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yes.
How are things on campus?
It's interesting. It's taken the school a long time to respond. Even just last week, the Palestinians did what they call a die-in, where they lay on the ground. The school puts on a beautiful lunch every year for all the faculty around the holiday time, and you couldn't hear the music because they were chanting. But optimistically, the day before the fall graduation, last Friday, the school revised the on-campus policy, which they were working on for a long time, for protest. Now you can no longer obstruct a walkway, protest in a university building, or a roadway. So that was a big, big change, a welcome change. On the not so great side, our Student Supporting Israel Club is being investigated by the school for doxing and harassment, because one of my friends took a video of someone taking down a hostage poster. You might have seen it. It was all over social media at American University. She had red hair, and she went viral that she was taking down the posters. And they're investigating the president of the club, stripped the club of the funding, and are trying to discipline all the leaders of the club. But the Brandeis Center is helping them.
So is it illegal to dox? By the way, if you don't know what doxing is, that's when you, on social media, on the internet, you give out a person's name, address, email, telephone number, so that people will harass them. It's called doxing. Is
It
it
isn't
is it illegal?
illegal. It goes against the student code of conduct at school. So it's not a legal proceeding, but fortunately, there's a large contingent of the people who run the Students for Justice for Palestine that are transferring out of American, because our Center for Israel Studies was just rededicated by a donor, and they are upset that the school has not shut down the Center for Israel Studies. So what I always like to think is, as much as I'm frustrated by things they're not doing, the people on the other side are 10 times as angry, so they must be doing something right.
Right. So the other thing is that, from what we understand, Ackman withdrew, what was it, $100 million from Harvard, and now he's being petitioned by all the right people. Well, now you got $100 million. What are you going to do with it? And they're trying to help him direct it to campuses to do exactly what you just said, to bring finally pro-Israel programming and pro-Israel professors and departments and chairs of Middle East studies. to make a
And then
difference.
some. I am in the ZBT chapter of my school, and we just had an alumni who gave us $25,000 for pro-Israel on campus programming. So we gave out latkes on Hanukkah. We have yarmulkes now with our branding. And he said, I want it only on pro-Israel, public, loud, and proud activity.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. That's great. I'm glad to hear it. Do students walk around with yarmulkes on campus?
Um,
Well, let me rephrase that.
no,
Did people who wear yarmulkes before the war, do they still wear yarmulkes now?
yes, but there are people who would wear, the birthright IDF shirts or Star of David who do not wear them. I'm even very cautious walking, back from Shabbat on Friday nights. I make sure to take my yarmulke off before I get into my dorm because there are about a half dozen people who live on my floor whose Instagram and Snapchats and Facebooks are fluttered with, the Israel occupation forces are burning babies.
Right. So remember, so one of the things I do, Andrew, is like I really, really, really highly encourage people to vote, even in local elections. And I direct people how important it is as Jews, not just to vote every 4 years for president or for Congress or for governor, but even at the local level. So I'm going to hold this up. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. Does anyone recognize this building? It's on the corner of 67th Street and Indian Creek, right near the Walgreens. It's about a block south of the fire station, about 6 blocks south of Temple Menorah. It's on Indian Creek and 67th Street. And what happened was, you see where I circled in red? It's in Arabic, and it says "Free Palestine." So somebody, actually, Dr. Michael was with us tonight. I'm pretty sure I saw him. Michael is here. It's Michael's niece, Michelle. Oh, and Becky DeLaster's niece or cousin, Schrader, Michelle Schrader. She sent it to me. I sent it to our mayor, and I said, "Is there anything we could do about this?" Our new mayor is an Orthodox Jew. He's been in office exactly 10 days, and guess what? Said it was brought to my attention yesterday morning, and it was gone by 5 p.m. He sent, that's how important it is to vote, even at the local level. He sent code enforcement. Turns out that the building is closed. They had people break into the building and put up these in Arabic, it says "Free Palestine," but it was
Yeah,
gone by.
I saw it on Shabbat, last Shabbat, and I told Mort what it meant.
Wow. So the whole point was that within 12 hours of him finding out about it, that's why it's important, even at the local level, to have commissioners and mayors who are sympathetic to the right causes. That's why Jews have to vote in every election. All right, well, Chevra, I hope everyone enjoyed class tonight, and it actually ended on a very positive note. I was wondering, like, how can we study about all these anti-Semites without thinking about all the amazing pro-Israel artists? Oh, you know who's extremely pro-Israel and should all go out and buy something? Brito. Brito is like, he actually has a piece of artwork with IDF on it. He has an IDF artwork. So for every artist that you know that's a bad guy, a bad person, there are artists that are good people also. So
he actually donated a lot of money to the IDF. He actually made special pieces that were sold after that, and he just for the IDF and for the FDF for the gala.
Right. One of the somebody bought my Aliza has it. It's the state of Israel, Brito, a state of Israel turning into a dove. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So the whole point is for every bad person, there's plenty of good people too. So I hope everyone enjoyed class. Have a good evening, everyone. We'll see you
Night,
in shul.
everybody.
All right. Lila
Thank you,
Tov, everyone.
Rabbi. Good class.
And Ahuva, it's great to have you back online.
Have a good computer working. Yes, I need that.
Did you get a new one or?
No. I actually was able to do some of it by myself, and then I needed some help with putting together some other stuff, and we fixed it.
Okay, so when I have a problem, can I
I
call
was
you?
there this morning. Well, my problem was to try and save everything, so I said, once I saved everything, and then the programs were taken out from the computer, but
Right.
I was able to save everything, but it was funny. It was document, but not the Word document. So there was like no W on it, but the document was there. So then I had to upload the Word and all of the, Office and
Yeah.
everything else. And so, but it's done. It's okay.
Heather, will you forgive me? Unfortunately, I have to
Good
phone call.
night, everybody.
Lila
Good
Tov,
night.
everyone.
Good night, Rob.